I've created almost 100 science videos for the classroom. The videos cover every next generation science standard for biology and earth science, including astronomy. Show them in the classroom, assign them to your students who are absent, use them as supplemental materials, or use them to learn yourself. You can pick individual videos for as little as $1 or save 10 to 20% by getting a bundle. Search Planet Peterson on Teachers Pay Teachers or click the link in the description. Today's the day we conclude dissecting this steaming pile of hot garbage. My thing here is telling me we have 37 minutes worth of narration to conclude this final part here, which is going to address once and for all, how old is the Earth and what is time? Oh, Kent, that's very ambitious of you.
Believe it or not, one of the most important subjects that needs to be addressed in the creation-evolution controversy is the subject of time. How old is the Earth? Is the Earth and universe 6,000 or 7,000 years old, as the Bible seems to indicate?
No.
Or is it billions of years old, as the evolutionists claim?
Well, it's not just evolutionists, but physicists, geologists, astronomers, anybody. Everything about the age of the Earth and evolution, there are no contradictions there. We can just ignore evolution. We can see billions of light years, and rocks have been dated to billions, but fewer billions of years than the distance in light years. No contradiction there. There's no issue with that whatsoever. That alone doesn't prove anything indefinitely, but again, we have no contradiction. Whereas your Bible contradicts the data, and what you do is say the data is wrong.
If the Earth is not old, if it is only 6,000 or 7,000 years old, as I contend that it is, that ends the argument for evolution.
No, it does not. In fact, Kent believes in evolution. Kent believes in a hyper-caffeinated, super overdrive version of evolution because he thinks only a few thousand animals on the ark turned into millions of animals we see today.
There can be no evolution in such a short time frame. Time is absolutely essential to the evolutionists. If a person starts trying to prove the fact that the Earth is only 6,000 or 7,000 years old, the evolutionists get extremely defensive. They will bring up many different questions, such as, what about carbon dating? Mm-hmm. What about the dinosaurs? Mm-hmm. What about cavemen? Mm-hmm. What about the geologic features of the Earth, etc.? I will try to answer these questions, as well as many others, later in this book.
We already did this, but he doesn't do any of that. So carbon, yep. One entry, so he doesn't deal with that. Pretty sure he does deal with dinosaurs, right? Oh, dinosaur only comes up 5 times. Okay. Cavemen comes up 1 time. And geologic, 1 time. Geology, 1 time. How about age? Well, that's not, hold on. We have to do space, age, space. 29 times. Okay, that's decent, but yeah, once again, I said this a bunch before, but this is an incomplete assignment, and he got a PhD for it. I watched his debate with Mr. Anderson, not the entire thing, but I watched a bunch of it the other day, and Kent said, I have 4 PhDs, actually, 3 earned, so he has an honorary one. I was like, no, you do not have 3 earned PhDs. This would... With the way standards are so lax today, this would probably get a D+ or a C- in a high school English class. I wouldn't. This would be an incomplete. It would go in the gradebook as a 0 until you either fixed it or finished your thoughts.
First, we will look at the subject of time. Lack of billions of years is the Achilles heel to evolution. If there isn't a lot of time, the argument is absolutely over. Time is essential.
So that would mean if there is a lot of time, then the argument's over for you. But the only thing we have evidence of is billions of years.
To the evolutionist. Their entire argument is built on the premise that there is plenty of time.
Mm-hmm.
How old is the Earth? First of all, let's discuss what is time anyway.
Let's do anything other than address the actual question. What is time anyway?
Time is a measurement that we use as humans here on Earth to measure the rate at which things decay.
He's really obsessed with this idea that everything gets worse over time. Now, is entropy something that happens in the universe? And can you kind of describe entropy and time in very similar ways? Yes, but that's just such a terrible, unsophisticated description.
Time is a human element that does not affect God. It's difficult for us to understand how there can be no time in heaven. How can there be another dimension? We tend to think that this is April 28th, 1390, or whatever date it is.
Or whatever date it is. Why would you pick that date?
In heaven. This is the most common mistake people make when thinking about God. God is not limited by time. There is no time at all in...
So, I'll just let him go here, but the problem we have here is then your God concept is completely incoherent. He's probably going to say something to the effect of, God's not bound by any of these things. We hear the spaceless, timeless, immaterial thing all the time. And I don't even know what to call that, because it's not, I guess it's sort of a cop-out, because they'll say, no, all the problems that my concept of God has, or with what the Bible says about the way things happened, the order of events, how long they took, well, my God's not bound by those things, because my God has properties that are literally unintelligible, unexplainable. So this isn't an explanation. It's not even an excuse, really. I mean, I guess you could call it an excuse, but because... No, I wouldn't even do that, because if your excuse can't be justified or backed up in any way, then it's just literally the weakest cop-out of all time. It's kind of funny, I was thinking about this earlier. What they do sometimes is they do a goalpost shift, but usually you try to shift the goalpost away from you and demand an impossible standard. Here they make it so the goalpost is basically behind you. You've already gone through the goalpost and nothing needs to be explained.
In heaven. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever because he is in a different dimension than we are. Right away, someone will say, now that just doesn't make sense. Everything is affected by time. Be careful with statements like that. You are trying to put human limitations on God.
No, we're trying to make God intelligible.
God does not have any human limitations. We are the ones locked in time and space, not God. Heaven and eternity are not things we can comprehend while we are locked in flesh. An example of this would be the story where Paul...
Then there's no reason to think it's real.
Paul was stoned to death outside the city of Lystra. Paul went to heaven where he got a foretaste of eternity. He saw heaven. God said, I'm sorry, Paul, you must go back down to earth. I'm not done with you yet.
He saw heaven, 3 exclamation points, in an academic paper.
Yet. So Paul went back down as they were dragging his body out of the city to throw it on the garbage heap. He crawled into that body again and arose from the dead.
This should be multiple
he said 14
paragraphs.
Years later, I knew a man in Christ above 14 years ago. Whether in the body or whether out of the body, I cannot tell. God knoweth. Such an one caught up to the third heaven. 2 Cor 12:2. He said that there he saw things that were not lawful for him to utter. I believe what happened there was that he saw things that he could not describe to his listening audience because they were still bound in their human bodies. If you were talking...
Then Paul wouldn't be able to explain them because he had a human body.
...to a blind man and you were going to try to explain to him the different colors of the rainbow, you would be wasting your time.
Ah, okay. That's actually not a bad analogy.
He cannot understand the differences. You cannot explain sounds or music to a person who has been deaf all of his life. You just won't get the information into his mind. There are 5 entrances into the human mind. We call those the 5 senses. We think that God is limited to those 5. There may be thousands or millions of things beyond our comprehension. To say that it is 1990 and heaven is to put human limitations on God, I think that is a very foolish thing to do. What time?
Oh man, why is this thing, and the narration's not so sharp today? I have no comment.
Time is it in heaven? Let's imagine that you are in a helicopter above the Grand Canyon.
How old is the Earth? Let's talk about time. But instead of talking about time, I'm going to talk about how there is no time for God. So we're not addressing the age of the Earth. We're not addressing what time is at all. And now we're in a helicopter above the Grand Canyon.
As you hover up there, we'll imagine that you have the capacity to hover for days and days at a time.
Why do you need to add that?
You notice through your telescope that some people are launching a raft at the beginning of the canyon. About 30 minutes later, another group of people launch a raft. 30
Wow.
minutes later, a third group of people launch a raft.
Wow.
Every 30 minutes, a new group of people starts their journey through the Grand Canyon on a raft. None of the groups can see each other because of the twists and bends of the river as it goes through the canyon. They cannot see the group in front of them or behind them. As far as they are concerned, they're all alone. However, you, in your helicopter, are able to see all of the groups at the same time. You can see the one at the beginning of the race that left 4 days ago, and you can see the group that is just now leaving. Each one of the groups has a different perspective of the canyon.
Yeah, except there would be parts of the canyon where you can see hundreds, if not thousands of feet in front of you. So that's his attempt to try to explain a fourth dimensional being. It's cute.
Each one of them sees a different section of the canyon. They are locked into position. They cannot decide to jump ahead 50 miles or to jump back 50 miles. They have to go with the flow, so to speak. You are in the same position here on Earth.
Why would you say that? If you said that defending any kind of dissertation, you should just immediately be thrown out.
Earth as far as time goes. We are locked into 1991 right now. We will be here for a year, then we will be locked into 1992. We cannot speed it up or slow it down regardless of what we do. However, God is not in our time with us. He is above time.
Also, a scientist wouldn't say things, would not talk about time as if this is 1991, as if the universe gives a shit about the number of times the Earth has gone around the sun since a particular point in history. So, just F's all around.
God is the one in the helicopter, so to speak. He can see the beginning and the end and the middle all simultaneously. That is absolutely beyond our comprehension. We don't understand that at all, but by faith we have to believe that because God revealed himself to us as being outside of time.
By faith, we have to believe it. I'm with you there. But then he said, because God revealed. No, he didn't reveal that. You're just saying that's what you have to believe because it's the only way you can preserve your version of Christianity and history and etc. in spite of the evidence that we have. So that was an incredibly telling statement. Bravo, Kent. That is the only honest thing I think I've ever heard Kent say.
He is omniscient, knows all things. He is omnipresent, present everywhere and at all times.
No, because he had to go down to Sodom and Gomorrah to see for himself. He explicitly said he doesn't know if what's happening there is as bad as the reports are. So,
God could right now, from his vantage point in heaven, see Adam and Eve in the garden. He could see the end of the world, or see Christ on the cross, or any of the historical events between this roughly 6,000-year history of the earth. To say that God is locked into time is a serious mistake that people need to avoid. Someone once asked me the question, what did God do for all of those billions of years before he made the earth? That question indicates the faulty logic that God is locked into time like we are. You must avoid that if you are to understand anything about God. God created time. He started it about 6,000 years ago.
No. You don't understand anything about God. You claim God exists, and every single quality about this God is completely unknowable and unintelligible.
And will let it run until he is finished with whatever it is he wants to do. When we get to heaven, there will be no time. We will not be in heaven for billions of years. There will not be any years at all. There are many songs that allude to time in heaven. For instance, when we've been there 10,000 years. I'm sorry,
What?
but we will not be there for 10,000 years. We will be there forever, which is a totally new dimension. I cannot explain it because I don't understand it.
Kent, this is like your coming out party. You can't explain it. You have no justifications. You don't understand. If he did that, I'm so proud of him.
Just have to believe it. I do know that it says in I Corinthians 2:9 that God has things that we are not capable of understanding, things that are beyond our comprehension. There are new things.
You know what? I might put that into my opening statement or something when I debate him. That would be pretty funny. In Kent's own words, because I kind of, I don't want to spoil it too much, but I went over how Kent in my opening statement, I essentially say something like, Kent will not be able to answer a single question because the God hypothesis is completely unintelligible and it can't explain anything. All of its explanations are post hoc. And then I'd have to add, and in Kent's own words, he doesn't understand it.
Things for us to learn. Right now, we are not able to understand what heaven is like because of our limitations. Electromagnetic spectrum. For instance, look at the illustration.
So what a transition. This is the only picture, diagram, anything that appears in his this thing's over 100 pages long. I mean, it's pretty lengthy, but it's the only illustration in there. And it's just this crappy little thing of the electromagnetic spectrum. It didn't Xerox very well, but it's still just terribly inadequate. And this transition, there is no time in heaven. For instance, I don't know exactly where he's going with this, but if you're writing, when you jump from one thought to another, one paragraph to another, with no transitions or anything, you're just leaving the reader to be blindsided by your laziness and lack of creativity.
Of the electromagnetic spectrum. The section that we can see with our eyes we call the color range. These are basically 6 colors of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet.
Why did God not design us to be able to see everything?
The spectrum goes beyond that in both directions forever. On the red side of the scale, it goes down to infrared. You and I cannot see infrared with our eyes. That does not mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that we cannot see it. The spectrum goes beyond violet to ultraviolet. We cannot see ultraviolet. We have a limited receptor, our eye. It is able to pick up just this brief range of colors from red to violet. Suppose that God decided to give us eyes that would be able to see the entire magnetic spectrum. We could then see radio waves, radar, television, or microwaves. I don't mean pick them up with an instrument. I mean actually see them with our eye. I don't know if that is going to happen or not, but it could be that in heaven there will be brand new colors. I don't mean brand new shades or combinations of these colors that we are used to.
Here's an idea that I can't justify in any way. It makes me very happy to think about the possibility that in heaven we'll be able to see new colors, and the water in heaven and the matter in heaven will be completely different as well. My name's Kent Hovind.
I mean brand new colors. If I went to heaven for 5 minutes and saw brand new colors and came back down to earth and you said, Kent, where have you been? I would say, well, I've been to heaven for 5 minutes. You would say, what's it like? I would say, I can't explain it to you. You would think something was wrong, just like I'm sure people thought Paul was crazy after he came back down from heaven and said, I saw things it is not lawful for a man to utter.
Probably bestiality and stuff like that in heaven. I don't know. I mean, if like priests and deacons go to heaven, they're definitely doing unspeakably unlawful things up there in heaven because they're doing them here on earth.
We need to get a new set.
Children, I'm talking about children.
Set of eyes and a new set of ears. We need new sensory organs if we are to understand everything that God has for us. God has given us very limited capacities down here on earth. We can understand and see a few things, but God is by no means limited by our 5 senses and their limited range. As I was thinking on this subject, I wrote a poem to try to explain this, comparing blind men and atheists.
A poem? Oh, no.
2 blind men argued well into the night about the great question, is there really sight? Said one to the other, and quite fervently. There cannot be colors or else we could see, so take red and green and blue off the list. If I cannot see them, they must no exist. A crazy man told me the sky is bright blue. I listened intently, but I caught no clue of anything out there to alter my mind. I'm not deaf, you know. I hear perfectly fine.
Why did you put a poem in a thesis paper?
Be quiet and listen, and then you will know. That colors aren't real. How dare they say so? They tell me that grass is some sort of green. It looks like the rest of the world that I've seen. It tastes a lot different than jelly or cheese. If I smell it too long, it sure makes me sneeze. It feels a lot different than ice cream or snow. But to say that it's green, I'd have to say no. I will not believe it until I have seen. There isn't a difference atwixt red, blue, or green.
This sound... Okay. the cadence of this, the style, the topic is so much like Dr. Seuss. I put this into ChatGPT and I just said, which writer does this sound most like? And there you go, Dr. Seuss. It's charming and whimsical. It's almost like musical when you hear it in a really weird sort of way, even though there's like no music. But yeah, a Dr. Seuss style poem in a PhD thesis. Wow.
And so the men argued with all of their might, and I couldn't show them that they were not right. They cannot see colors because they are blind. But I couldn't get the truth in their mind. Until they are given the great gift of sight, never, not ever, will they see the light.
That is... It sounds so much like Green Eggs and Ham. Oh, man.
Atheists argued on university sod about the great question, is there a God? Said one to the other, and quite fervently, there can't be a God or else we could see. So take that old Bible and God off the list. If I cannot see him, he must no exist. Be quiet and listen, and then you will know. That God is not real, how dare they say so? A crazy man told me God lives up in heaven. I used to believe that when I was just 7.
He actually does say he must no exist. What? And that's happened multiple times. I figured it was just, no exist. What is he doing? Is he saying blind people have the intelligence of cavemen?
But now that I'm older and wiser, you see, I will not believe it. You can't prove it to me. I cannot sense God with sight, taste, or smell. I do not believe in heaven or hell. I've never heard God or felt him at all. If he's really up there, I wish he would call. I said, listen, fellows, you're spiritually blind. You've only 5 entrances into your mind. That limits your input. I wish you could see. You can't fathom God or eternity. There are lots of things that really are real. It doesn't disprove God because you can't feel. So you two can argue the rest of the night. There's no way to show you that you are not right. When you get to heaven, or hell if you please, you'll understand God as you fall on your knees. I wish you could see him or hear him somehow. But that isn't possible where you are now. To deny his existence is really absurd. You'll have to believe him and trust in his word. That is the...
I'll say it. That was really creative and kind of fun. Stupid, but there you go. And the context of where it was put is just unthinkably stupid. But bravo, Kent.
The way I see it, we have to admit by faith that God exists because we are limited in our senses. A blind person believes by faith that there are colors. He has never seen them, but he believes by faith that they exist because everyone has told him about them. I believe by faith that...
Yeah, because other people have experiences with colors.
That there is a God. I believe that there is no time in heaven. People ask, where was God before the creation? How long did God wait before the Garden of Eden, before he created man? Well, you are back into the same argument. God didn't wait any time at all. There wasn't any time, and I can't explain it other than to say that's the way it is.
The honesty, Kent. I'm so proud. You have no idea what you believe in. You can't justify what you believe in. You just proclaim it.
It's been explained like this. Once upon a time, there was a time when there was no time.
That was worse than the poem.
God didn't wait a long time before creating Adam and Eve. He started time when he created the earth. To answer the question, what did God do for billions of years? There weren't billions of years before or after the creation. After this is over, we will go back to a different dimension, beyond our current capacity to understand, called eternity. Back to the question...
Eternity is a dimension?
How old is the earth? According to...
Oh, yeah, that's right.
To the Bible times given in Genesis 5:11, and the chronologies given in many other places in the Bible, the date for the creation was about 4000 BC by adding up the fact that Adam was 130 years old when Seth was born, and how old Seth was when his son was born, and so on. We can come up with a fairly accurate time. That would be about 6,000 years ago. I'm not one of these fellows that says that Adam was created on April 7th at 4 p.m. I don't know the exact date. I would say that 4000 BC is probably within a couple of hundred of years. I contend that the Earth is 6 or 7,000 years old. There may be some slight error. For instance, was Adam 130 and a half years old when Seth was born? Are the dates rounded off to the nearest year? Was it on his birthday when his son was born? Did they use a year like we us? Did they use a solar year, 365 and a quarter days? Did they use a Hebrew calendar, 360 days? There are some slight possibilities for some minor changes, but nothing that accounts for billions of years. There is no question that the Bible clearly teaches that the earth is young. Almost all Bible scholars of the past were persuaded that the earth was young.
Oh, wow. Did he really say persuaded? Because that would be funny. Yes, he actually did write persuaded. When your friends convince you of something, you are persuaded. Yes, there is metaphorical writing in the Bible, but not in Genesis. No, 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 no.
What happened? Why did Christians abandon the teaching that the earth is only 6,000 years?
Well, Kent, I think even you would agree that we were more ignorant in the past and we are less ignorant in the present. Actually, I have no idea if you would concede to that or not. So when we get new information, we change our minds. Why do you do the opposite?
Many of the Christians in the late L800s, after Darwin's book The Origin of Species came out, began to try to compromise the historic position of the church to adjust to Darwin's theory. They tried to blend the evolutionary theory with the Bible. They began to say that maybe there were billions of years in the Bible. Several compromise positions were created. One of these is known as the gap theory. They tried to insert a gap between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2. I believed the gap theory for quite some time. I had a Scofield Bible as a new Christian. It is an excellent Bible, but his notes are not inspired. Scofield said that there was a gap between verse 1 and verse 2. In that gap, they claim that Satan fell from heaven and the earth was destroyed. In that supposed gap, we are told to put the great ages that the evolutionists proclaim as incontestable fact. We are told that there was a pre-Adamic civilization that included all the dinosaurs. We are told that this civilization was destroyed when Satan fell from heaven.
That's pretty dumb, but not as dumb as just taking it literal all the way through the chapter.
There are a number of problems with that theory. The first problem is, it would be deceitful for God to hide millions of years in a gap like that.
But it's not deceitful for God to hide billions of light years in our universe. By all objective means, the Earth, the universe, nothing looks like it is as young as you think it. Well, I mean, I guess a person or, trees don't look billions of years old or whatever. But in terms of the Earth we live on and the universe, so your God is deceitful.
And not make it known in other scriptures. Secondly, it would be against other scriptures in the Bible which indicate that a gap of millions or billions of years couldn't be there. The Bible says a few verses later in Genesis 1:5, "The evening and morning were the first day."
But there was no sun yet.
Many modern translations of the Bible change the word the tuah to try to overcome this conflict. If there was a lot of time before verse 5, then verse 5 is telling a lie. Also, it says in Exodus 20:12 that God created the earth in 6 days. Another problem with the gap theory is the fact that it is contradicting Romans 5, where the Bible says that there was no death until Adam sinned. If there was some kind of pre-Adamic civilization with dinosaurs and giant men, or whatever they want to put in this supposed gap, they had to die when Satan fell from heaven and the earth became without form and void, as they read verse 2.
I mean, if I want to try to be as, I don't know, if I want to try to defend the gap theory, they ate plants because according to Kent, if you eat plants, then plants aren't alive, biblically speaking, so they don't die. And you could just say, I don't know, there were a few different creatures on this planet and they just never reproduced or died. None of that is as stupid or even close to as stupid as saying that what was really going on was there was an actual garden and there was a T-Rex in that garden and it ate watermelon.
The dinosaur fossils are still here on Earth. We have the skeletons, so they did die. That would mean that the Bible is a lie.
Kent, you claim that the whole fossil record, or virtually the entire fossil record, is from the flood. So this isn't a problem.
Lie in the New Testament where it says that there was no death until Adam sinned. Probably the most serious contradiction the gap theory proponent.
What's extremely funny about that is he tells you that a fossil tells you nothing other than an organism died. And then he goes on and says that the fossil record is almost entirely from the flood. But here he's saying, no, we can look at a fossil and tell, relatively speaking, when that fossil died. Okay, if that's the case, then just purely through the principle of fossil succession, we can tell that, for example, humans and dinosaurs never coexisted. So this is so contradictory for his worldview.
Must overcome is the plain testimony of Jesus himself. In Matthew 19:4, Jesus plainly said that the creation of Adam and Eve was the beginning. Was Jesus not aware of the gap, or was he lying to his followers? I absolutely do not
Well, he doesn't know the day or the hour, so maybe he doesn't know the past either.
believe in the gap theory. If there is indeed a gap between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2 where Satan fell, it would be only a gap of a few hours. This is because verse 5 says it was the first day. There is no reason to try to put billions of years in the Bible's framework. The theistic evolutionists have said that the 6 days of creation were actually epochs, ages, or eons of years. 2 Peter 3:8. A day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as a day with the Lord is a commonly used verse to justify this compromise. This doctrine is silly if you actually analyze the argument. One reason the day-age theory would be silly is to look at the sequence in which God created all things. If you look at the sequence of creation, you would see why this argument is not reasonable or scientific. God created the plants on day 3 before he created the sun on day 4. If you think plants are going to survive for billions of years without the sun, you need to study more biology. I believe...
What about the idea that there are days before there is a sun? Oh, man.
God did that on purpose to make us realize the days of creation were 24-hour days. He made the plants, herbs, trees, and grass on one day, and on the next day, he created the sun. The problem is further complicated when we realize that the insects to pollinate the plants were not created until day 5. The day-age theory is another unnecessary attempt by worried Christians to try to please the evolutionists.
So, animals that literally can't survive on plants can eat plants in your garden. Adam can live for 900 years, which is just absolutely impossible. There can be no death. Biologically speaking, I mean, there are like some organisms that can live forever, but it's unless they like get crushed or eaten or something like that. So all of this stuff, Kent, is perfectly fine, but plants living without a sun for a while, your God is incapable of doing that or sustaining them or anything. It's funny, he appeals to nature to say, no, your concept about what you believe about the Bible can't work because nature doesn't work that way. All right, I agree. Therefore, Earth can't only be 6,000 years old. Therefore, this garden story is to... No, because God can make any of that work. Peak irony.
Let's look at another analogy regarding the age of the Earth. Let's suppose you were to go out and find a sunken ship with a box of coins on that ship. When you open the box of coins, you find dates on the coins from all different ages. If there is a coin in the box from 1850, right away you are limited to say that the ship sank after 1850. If you find a coin in the box from 1820, that doesn't mean that the ship sank around 1820, because you also have an 1850 coin in there. You are limited to the youngest date in the box. It may have sunk well after that, but it cannot have sunk before that. If there is an 1850 coin in the box, and it is not a forgery, then the ship didn't sink in 1849. The same analogy is true when trying to determine the age of the Earth. There are many different ways that scientists try to test the age of the Earth. There are probably 500 or 600 ways to try to show the age of the Earth.
500 or 600 ways?
It is a very difficult thing to do conclusively. If a few of the methods...
And let's not leave it up to you, Kent.
...to date the Earth give old ages, but others give an age that is only a few thousand years old, as many do, then you have a dilemma. You must decide which you want to accept.
Evidence or dogma?
Because many scientists want to believe evolution, they will, of course, select the few that seem to indicate great ages and ignore the evidences that indicate a young age of the Earth.
There is no
Taking
evidence
only
of
evidence
that.
that supports a preconceived idea and rejecting all other evidence is not very intelligent or scientific.
We're just, I'm just going to highlight this. Just read that again to yourself and appreciate the irony once more. Yeah. Yeah.
I will give just a few of the ways to show that the Earth and solar system are young. I have a list put out by Henry Morris of the Institute for Creation Research, a list of 76 things that show the age of the Earth to be very young. Here are just a few of the evidences of a young Earth given by Dr. Morris. 1. The influx of cosmic dust to the Earth indicates that the Earth is less than 10,000 years old. Most of this dust has washed into the soil. This cosmic dust that comes from outer space contains a high percentage of nickel. Scientists have searched and searched for the nickel content in the Earth's crust. The amount of nickel is not great enough to account for billions of years. It only accounts for several thousand years. For instance, the influx of helium-4 into the atmosphere indicates something less than 175,000 years. 2.
I've never heard of this before. We know that through erosion and through the movement of tectonic plates, that the surface just doesn't sit there statically. I couldn't find anything on this. I just Googled cosmic dust proves young Earth, and I'm not even seeing anything to like the Answers in Genesis or Institution for Creation Research. This AI generated answer here for Google. I guess this kind of makes sense. They talk about, maybe Kent will bring up the dust on the moon, because that's a popular thing they say. But this just says, yeah, we should have, should be very thick here on Earth, but this indicates that his initial estimate was way off. But, again, there's weathering, erosion, tectonic uplift, and all kinds of things on our planet that our planet isn't dead like the moon. It's active. So I don't get it.
Radiometric decay produces helium, which has to escape into the atmosphere. By measuring the helium content in the atmosphere, we conclude that there could not have been radioactive decay for billions of years because there isn't enough helium in the atmosphere.
Helium being the second lightest gas, it goes higher into the atmosphere than anything else, and the solar wind pushes it away.
The percentage of helium in the atmosphere indicates a very young Earth. Evolutionists are searching for a way for the helium to escape into outer space to eliminate this evidence for a young Earth. So far, no method has been found. Another evidence that the Earth is young is the fact that there are still meteors and comets flying through space. We know that comets and meteors break up and decay as they pass through the solar system. We have never seen one formed, that is, get bigger or larger. We have seen many break up and fall apart. As comets circle around the solar system, they come close to the Earth or different planets. The gravitational forces of these planets break pieces off the comets, and they fragment or fall apart. How long could a comet circle through our solar system before it would disintegrate or run into a planet? Several astronomers have said that 10,000 years is the longest a comet could survive going through our solar system time and time again.
Okay, so let's take a pause here. This website is called The Sky Live. It's really great. Just Google 3D solar system. It'll be the first thing that pops up. So we can see, here are all the planets moving around. I can make it, let's speed this up a little bit. 1 second equals 2 months. There we go. So we can see these multiple different comets in purple here. Now, some of them, their orbits are, inside of Uranus. Oh, that's a huge orbit, actually. Inside of Uranus here. But others, if we zoom way out, we can see that it doesn't even complete the ellipse for it. And that's because our solar system is vastly, vastly bigger than you think it is. If you tried to make a scale model where Pluto was like 100 meters away from the sun in the middle, then the extent of our solar system, objects bound by the sun's gravity, that would extend. It takes, the circle is a significant portion of the entire country. I've seen this tactic many times where people try to quote mine something about comets here. I'm going to speed this way up so we can see the comets move. So what they say is a comet. So as comets get closer to the sun, what they do is they start to evaporate. It's more like sublimation because they're ice turning directly into gas. Way out here beyond Mars, the gases like carbon dioxide, water, all that stuff, it's way below their freezing point, so the comet stays together. But once that comet starts to get about in the neighborhood of Mars, it probably starts happening a little bit before that. That's when the comet actually develops its tail because the solar wind and the heat blasts and sublimates off the material that's on the comet. So a comet can last inside of that neighborhood of the solar system for around 10,000 years. However, as we can see, the deal with orbits is the farther away you get from the sun, and this orbit is actually way more eccentric than it looks. The farther away you get from the sun, the slower you move. And as you get closer to the sun, it speeds up and it speeds up. So for this comet, it will only be able to, the website froze, but that's fine. This comet will only be able to exist in that, local neighborhood near the sun for 10,000 total years. But that represents a very small fraction of the total amount of time that this comet will spend orbiting the sun, because it has a very elliptical orbit way out here. And it'll spend the vast majority of its time moving slower way out here, not close enough to the sun. And this comet doesn't even particularly have that wild of an orbit like we saw earlier. Some of these other ones, they go so much farther out there. Now, there are other comets that are they have fairly circular orbits, and they are inside this local neighborhood. And so it's like, hey, wait a minute. If those comets even exist, then the universe, the solar system, not the universe, but the solar system can only be like 10,000 years old. That assumes that comets never have their orbits changed. I mean, a solar system is full of tons of bodies that each influence each other gravitationally. Normally, those influences aren't much. I mean, Jupiter doesn't change Saturn's orbit. I mean, not really, not in any significant way. But these comets are much smaller, and they're moving in multiple crazy random directions. And so, yes, the orbital mechanics of comets can be disturbed. Again, we have no contradiction here whatsoever.
Like Halley's Comet does every 70 years before it would disappear. If this figure is correct, why do we still have comets? The fact that we have comets at all indicates that the Earth is still very young. Scientists that have analyzed this problem have come up with the comet bank theory. They speculate that somewhere in outer space there is a bank of comets. Every once in a while, something will check some out and distribute them throughout the universe.
So let me pause here just to say, it sounds like everything I just told you about comets and their orbital, their orbits being changed or whatever. It does sound like that's a very convenient excuse, right? But we're not really trying to force the comets to fit the data that we have, because the comets kind of are the outlier, not the thing you actually use to objectively date anything. And why do I say that? Because we can see for billions of years, and because we can date things to billions of years old here on Earth. So the comets are some of the comets, a small proportion of them. They're the weird thing. They're the thing that begs for an explanation in light of what we know about everything else. Kent is treating comets as if they're the be-all, end-all, and that's how you date things.
I'm making fun of them, of course. This is not exactly what they believe. They say that the comets are supplied from another source. They don't know what the source is, but we keep getting comets because of this comet bank. The very existence of short-period comets is one of the proofs of a young Earth.
It's not.
Another evidence that the Earth is young is fact that the Earth's spin is gradually diminishing. The diminishing spin is very minor. Just a second a century we are losing. D&E second per day per century is not significant in a short time frame of only a few thousand years. If you interpret that over of billions of years, however, it would mean that the Earth was spinning so fast that no life could have been possible due to the shorter days. Centrifugal force, earthquakes, and high winds created. The declining spin...
No way! I can't believe he said that. I can't believe he said that. This is just like when he that video I did with him where he talked about, the sun is losing mass, which means, if we go billions of years, then the sun would be so big that its gravity would swallow the earth. No, we crunched the numbers, and what actually it works out to is the sun loses 1% of its mass every 180 billion years. Okay, I crunched the numbers here. So if we go with 1 second per century, then what we end up with, if you do the math, how many seconds per day when you multiply that up to 4.5 billion years, it turns out you get what is it? Almost twice as many seconds of time lost than there are seconds in a year. Basically, what you get to is a day on Earth was less than 1 second. However, his number is completely wrong. It's not a second per century. It's 1.8 milliseconds per century. Kent, you were off by a factor of 555.5 repeating. If you do the math on that, then Earth has only lost a total of 81,000 milliseconds, which is 81 seconds in 4.5 billion years. That's also wrong. In the Triassic, a day was about an hour shorter, if memory serves me correctly. Earlier than that, like in the Devonian and the Cambrian or whatever, the day was only 20 to 21 hours long. To actually calculate this, you have to calculate how... It's really complicated. I don't know how to do it, but you have to have the how close the moon is to the Earth at the time, take into account as the moon retreats away, how much does that diminish its ability to slow the Earth, and all these other things.
Spin of the Earth is another fact that indicates a young Earth. The Earth's magnetic field is declining. Dr. Thomas G. Barnes, a professor of physics at the University of Texas in El Paso, claims that the Earth's declining magnetic field is a powerful indication that the Earth is extremely young. He is considered by many to be one of the world's experts on the subject. His studied opinion is that this bit of scientific data would limit the Earth's age to less than 25,000 years.
I've seen this figure before. The Earth's magnetic field has lost, here, let's look it up. It's like 30% of its strength in the last 100 years or something like that, or 1,000 years. In the last 160 years, the field has lost 10% of its strength. Well, that puts an age of the Earth at a maximum of, 1,600 years? 30% of its strength in the last 3,000 years? Well, that gets us to 10,000 years. There are fluctuations in the Earth's magnetic field strength. In fact, the Earth's magnetic, its polarity flips. Again, what we're doing here is zooming in on part of a cycle and then assuming that the cycle does not ever go up and down, that it's actually linear or, parabolic or something, and then just saying, at what point does this just end, get us to 0 or something like that? And that's how old we'll say the Earth is.
If we can prove that the Earth is young, only 6,000 or 7,000 years old, that really ends the argument of evolution. Evolutionists will fight tooth and nail to be able to hold to the faulty idea that the Earth is billions and billions of years old. When a number of scientific attempts to establish some kind of age for the Earth prove that the Earth is really very young, reasonable people should accept the facts. Of course, evolutionists would jump at anything that would indicate that the Earth is billions and billions of years old because it is such a vital part of their theory. Someone would say, what about stars? We know that they are billions of light years away. I don't want to sound like a crackpot, but actually we don't know that stars are billions of years away.
Light years, and yes, we do.
There are 2, maybe 3 methods of determining how far away the stars are. One of these methods is just simple trigonometry. However, when you get to extremely minute angles, it is very difficult to measure anything less than a couple of arcseconds accurately. You cannot measure distances accurately more than 60 to 100 light years away. Not 60 to 100 million light years, just 60 to 100 light years.
As far as parallax goes, that's probably true, yeah.
The other method that used is called the redshift method. We will discuss this in more detail later.
Oh, I really doubt that we do. No, we use standard candles. The redshift, I don't know what he's talking about there. I think he's talking about the light from galaxies, I guess. That would make sense. Surprise, surprise. Oh, I guess it's actually cut off, but no, this is the only time that redshift comes up. You can see there's only one yellow bar, so he never, ever, ever says redshift again. So we will not discuss this in more detail later.
How old is the Earth? I believe that the Earth is only 6 to 7
Why are we repeating the question that started this off in the middle?
thousand years old. I taught high school science for 14 years, and for 3 years taught college-level science.
No, you
I'm convinced
didn't.
that much of our modern science, especially relating to evolution, is an absolute joke. We are in the same position as the people in the days before Columbus, when people were teaching that the Earth was flat, or when...
Oh, that's not even true. Oh, man. When my new book comes out, I have a whole section dedicated to how that's not true.
they taught the doctrine of humors or draining blood to cure illnesses, and many other wrong conclusions of science. They were very wrong. Science has a long history of being dogmatically wrong. I believe that one of the areas in science and the Bible that needs to be restudied is the critical issue of the age of the Earth. This will prove to be the undoing of the doctrine of evolution.
We're just completely redoing what we started off doing here. What a joke.
The hypothesis of evolution has had preeminence in our public teaching for about the last 30...
I've never seen anybody do that. Call it the hypothesis instead of the theory of evolution. That's it. That's really interesting. Normally they just say it's just a theory, but he's calling it a hypothesis.
30 to 40 years. Darwin's book, published in 1860, really started the controversy going. There have been groups teaching evolution for several thousand years. The Egyptians taught a form of evolution, saying that life evolved from the slime along the Nile River. Today, we trace our modern...
That is not a form of evolution. That's a mythology. If that's evolution, then saying God created Adam out of clay is evolution, and that Eve, the McRib woman, that's evolution too.
An evolutionary movement to Darwin. Darwin's book became almost universally accepted within 10 years of its release in 1860. Toward the end of the 19th century, it was extremely difficult to combat this teaching of evolution. Archaeological finds were not complete, and Darwin claimed that there were thousands of intermediate species between the major kinds that we find today. He said that it was a matter of time before these missing links were dug up. It has been 130 years now, and the missing links are still missing.
No, they aren't. We have the whale fossils are extremely good. We have Archaeopteryx that was found in his lifetime, and we have so many different hominids.
I believe that the Earth is young, and Darwin's theory is not only unscientific, it is absolutely stupid.
Okay.
To believe that all of this complicated life in this complicated universe came about just by the random shaking of molecules demands an awful lot more faith than I have. I believe that the Earth...
Still a better explanation than magic. Anything will always be better than magic.
was created in 6 literal days, not eons or epochs of time like the Living Bible says in the notes given in Genesis 1.
Well, good for you.
It says that each day was a period of time. There is no evidence of that, and Ken Taylor needs to re-examine the evidence for that. I believe that the current teaching...
Who the hell is Ken Taylor? What? Who the fuck is Ken Taylor? Was this entire thing spawned by some guy named Ken Taylor that that debated Kent Hovind 40 years ago, 30 years ago?
Teaching of evolution that is going on in our public schools and public universities has spawned a great number of social evils. For instance, communism is a direct offshoot of evolution.
We're back to that was video 1.
If a frog turns into a prince instantaneously, we call that a miracle or a fairy tale. But if that frog turns into a prince very slowly, taking 300 or 400 million years to make the transition, we will teach that in our universities as scientific fact.
He says that all the time. Idiotic straw man. Nobody thinks that frogs turned into humans. Amphibians and mammals. Amphibians are not the ancestor of mammals. It's just that they evolved first on our planet. Well, they evolved before mammals.
And let me give you just a few evidences that the Earth is young. First of all, the coral reefs that are growing off of the coast of Australia is growing at a certain rate. People have said that the growth of the coral reefs ought to show us how old the Earth is. With study, they discover that under certain conditions, coral grows extremely fast. Under conditions, they grow very slowly.
So if a tree grows an inch a year and the tree is 100 feet tall, then that would mean that the Earth could only possibly be, 1,200 years old? What is this logic?
So the rate of growth is very difficult to determine, to prove that it happened at a constant rate. Right after the flood, as all of the water went down, all of the decayed plant matter would have made the water very high in minerals, and decayed plant and animal life would have been high in nutrients to make anything to grow. Food would have been readily available with all of the rotting carcasses of the vegetation and the animals. The coral could have grown much faster.
No, because what would happen is, that's kind of true, but what would have happened is bacteria and algae would have gobbled it up and reproduced so much faster than anything else. And so what it would have done is it would have killed everything. It's called like anoxia or something like that. This problem's really bad in the Gulf of Mexico because of all the fertilizer runoff that comes through the Mississippi River because it has such a huge drainage basin. So no, Kent, all of that stuff, like, you're right, but it would not have led to coral growth. It would have absolutely sterilized the oceans for very long periods of time.
Faster under these conditions, then it would have slowed down to its current rate. People who have studied coral reefs say that they could have been formed in 4,000 to 5,000 years with no problem. If the Earth is older than that, why aren't the coral reefs much larger? Their rate of growth indicates a young age for the Earth.
No, it doesn't, because you don't tell how old a planet is by the rate at which corals grow.
Bristlecone pine trees, the red trees, and the sequoia trees in California. The guides in California say that there is no reason that any of these trees should ever die. Apparently they will...
What does that mean?
...will live until some disease attacks them. If they are protected from disease, they will just keep on growing, adding a ring every year. One way, of course, to tell how old a tree is to drill a core sample and count the rings.
I mean, we know where this is going. On what grounds do you claim that the oldest tree on Earth was the very first tree ever on the Earth?
The bristlecone pine tree grows extremely slow. By the time a tree is 100 years old, it is not quite 1 inch in diameter. To count 100 rings in a half-inch is difficult and must be done with a microscope. Counting rings is a little more difficult than just sawing the tree down and looking at it. The bristle pine trees indicate an age of about 4,000 years maximum. If the Earth is millions of years old, why don't we have a 50,000-year-old bristlecone pine tree someplace, or a 500,000-year-old? The age of the oldest living thing in the biosphere, the bristlecone pine, indicates a young age for the Earth. The evolutionists don't look at that one because that doesn't support their theory.
It doesn't support your theory.
Texas is another indication that the Earth is young. I lived 5 years in Texas. I saw a flame shooting up in the sky one night and went over to investigate. There were some men burning off the natural gas as they were drilling an oil well. I began asking them questions, talked about the oil therein. Longview, Texas, they told me that they have a blowout protector that they put about 1,000 feet down in the ground in case they drilled into a pocket of pressure. I asked them what kind of pressure they were talking about. How much pressure is the oil under down there in the ground? When drilling down about 3,500 feet, often the oil has 20,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. If you have ever pumped up a bicycle tire to 70 or 80 pounds of pressure, you understand that it is pretty hard to do. That pressure would crack the rock in the strata because after a period of time, the rock could only withstand the pressure for so long. Some scientists spent quite a bit of time studying different rock strata that oil is found in and the strata that the oil is found under, and try to determine how long the oil could withstand the intense pressure that it was under. Melvin Cook did quite a bit of study on this. The studies indicated that the oil could not have been under that pressure for more than 10,000 years. The fact that the oil is still under that pressure indicates that it has been down there less than 10,000 years.
So I don't know what the actual argument here is, but the oil in I don't know if they're anticlines or synclines. I can't remember which one it is, but that oil and gas can get trapped in there. And then if the strata layers bulge upward, I think that kind of adds to the pressure a little bit. But most of it's from the gas that's in there, and the overlying rock layers put pressure on the system. But the oil and gases, for them to be in there at all is over long periods of time is because the rock that surrounds them, it's typically called a cap rock, I believe, and it's rock that's not permeable. Some rocks can hold a lot of like shale or whatever. We have oil shales and groundwater aquifers. People have this idea that aquifers below the ground are just like cave systems that water sits in. No, it's solid rock, but the water can move through it because it's porous. It's spongy in a way. But anyways, the rocks that surround these gas and oil preserves isn't permeable, so it locks into place there. It doesn't leak. What's really funny is the oil and natural gas that we have on our planet, the biologists and geologists have a very sophisticated understanding of what time period in Earth's history these things formed in. And the oil companies, they go around assuming that all of the data about how old these strata layers are and these deposits are. So the oil companies go, look, we know we need to find sedimentary deposits, whatever, that are this many hundreds of millions of years old, because that's where the oil is going to be. And they're wildly successful at this. In other words, all of the predictions about a very old Earth coupled with evolutionary epochs is confirmed countless times every year, over and over and over and over again, by people that don't care, have no agenda with defending the age of the Earth. They're just trying to make money.
Often, when they first began drilling oil wells in the early 1930s, they would hit that pocket of pressure, and it would blow everything up out of the ground. The 30 or 40,000 feet of pipe would just be shot up out of the ground like spaghetti because of this intense pressure.
Oh, no.
I would like to ask the evolutionists if he has some kind of answer to the fact that if the Earth is indeed millions of years old, why is the oil still under such incredible pressure? Why hasn't it dissipated into the rock and formed cracks and leaked out through the years? Another evidence that the Earth is young instead of millions of years old is the sediment in the ocean. A friend of mine out in California brought me a slab of what looked like a piece of polished marble, about the size of a small tabletop. He said, "Mr. Hovind, I brought this to you because I thought you might be interested in it." I asked him what it was, and he said that it was a slab of ocean floor. He said that he went down, blew the sediment away with a jet of high-speed water, and then cut a slab of the rock out of the ocean floor. The sediment in the ocean is only a certain thickness. The thickness of the sediment could be accumulated in about 30 or 40,000 years at the current rate that sediment is being deposited. If the Earth is millions of years old, why isn't the sediment thicker? This is a question that evolutionists can't answer or avoid.
I don't know specifically what I know what he means here, but I don't know like what parts of the ocean he's talking about. Out in the abyssal plains, the sediment doesn't really travel that far, but it can still be hundreds or thousands of feet thick in places. Just off the coasts, the sediment deposits, I've seen that they are up to 1 or 2 kilometers thick in some places. There isn't a lot of detail here, so he could be conflating the rate at which layers of sediment are deposited like offshore with how thick is the sediment in the abyssal plain, and then you would see like an obvious mismatch, but that's very dishonest. Another important thing is we have tectonic plates. Not all of the ocean floor is the same age, and things get recycled, dumped back onto land, plunged into the mantle.
Because they're only looking for evidences that would seem to indicate a great age of millions or billions of years. Anything that would seem to be troublesome to their ridiculous theory they simply avoid. The ocean sediment indicate a young age for the Earth. Of course, the rate of the deposition of sediment is always a factor that must be considered. Right after a worldwide flood, quite a bit.
Yeah, one in which you did not consider. Or why don't we just consider something that doesn't vary over time, like the speed of light, or like the decay of radioactive isotopes? Funny how we haven't talked about that at all.
Of sediment would accumulate just right there. That is why if you get an age of 25 or 30,000 years at our current rate of deposition, it is possible that the first 70% was accumulated in a few years after the flood. Then the rate of deposition would have dropped to where today it would look like 30,000 years, but actually could be accounted for in 4,000 years. The erosion of the continents indicates a young Earth. At the current rate of erosion, we are losing a lot of ground to the oceans. New Orleans, for instance, is built on sediment that has come down from Illinois. The major river systems have been tested fairly carefully a number of times to see how much sediment they are bringing out every year, how much material is being transported. At the current rate of erosion, the continents would erode down to sea level in 14 million years. The mountains would be gone and the entire Earth would be a swamp.
Yeah, except we have tectonic uplift, so there's a process that keeps adding elevation in our land masses. So it's not just erosion.
If the evolutionist is going to say that we have 140 million years since the time of the dinosaurs, that is enough time for the Earth to erode away 10 times. So they come up with the theory of the continental lifting.
Oh, there we go.
The plates shifting around, the subduction of the Earth, the mid-Atlantic ridge. All of these may have some validity, but the rate of erosion proves that the Earth is not 140 million years old.
No, it doesn't, because that's not... It's not linear, and you brought up these things, but then just completely ignored that they take into account the uplift to... The Earth doesn't just erode to flat, it keeps getting uplifted, so there's a I don't know what you want to call that, some give and take.
My explanation would be that most of the erosion, the formation of mountain ranges and Grand Canyon, was formed after the flood as the water went down. Then the current of erosion would be misleading, and
there's this hilarious debate he did about Noah's flood, where the person he was debating said to him, Kent, if all the Earth's, like, if you're going to claim that the continents all broke up and all the mountains we see on Earth, that happened in that very short period of time, then that would have created tsunamis, the likes of which the Earth has never seen. So how did a wooden boat survive that? And I'm not kidding, he said, oh, well, when the tsunamis were happening over here, then the boat was over here. And he had a globe and he just pointed to it. I'm like, that's your explanation? So pathetic.
Earth would be only 4,000 to 5,000 years old since the flood happened. The rate of erosion is a good evidence for a young Earth. The moon is receding. As you measure the distance to the moon, it can be seen that every year the moon gets a little bit further away.
I'm skipping this part of the moon because I did an entire video where he focused on the moon, so I don't want to repeat things.
There are many Christians who try to pacify the evolutionists. They came up with several different alternatives. One was the day-age theory. This said that the days mentioned in Genesis are really periods of time, or evolutionary ages. This is where many of the modern translations of the Bible go bad because they change slight little phrases in Genesis 1, get out different translations, and compare how they treat Genesis 1. The King James Version says it was the first day. It uses the definite article. The many other versions of the Bible use the article a. They will say that this was a first day and a second day.
So the text has been corrupted? Well, welcome to Islam, Kent. You'll love it. You've been married 3 times, you'll get 72 virgins in heaven. Muhammad was married to a 9-year-old. Children get molested at your park. The text has been corrupted. You agree.
That little subtle change is just an attempt to allow for the day-age theory. Ken Taylor's Living Bible...
There's Ken Taylor again. I don't know who this person is or what the Living Bible is, whatever.
I don't the garbage heap want to be too negative because there are many good things about it. In Genesis has an attempt to pacify the evolutionists by trying to include billions of years into the Bible framework. They do that by perverting the Scripture. The Scripture teaches that it was the first day, and it was 6 literal days, not 6 periods of time. God told Moses later in Exodus 20:12 in the 10 Commandments, "For in 6 days God created the heavens and the earth." Moses would have been a liar. Jesus obviously taught in a young earth and an instantaneous creation. He talked about Adam and Eve being created. God created them male and female. So Jesus would be a liar also if evolution were true. There are some evidences that the earth is young. Most cultures that are found in the world tell of a worldwide flood in the last 5,000 to 6,000 years. The population of the earth today doubles regularly. If you were to draw up...
It does not double... today it does. Like in the last 120 years, it's doubled like 4 times or something like that. But it was flat for vast stretches of time before that.
The population growth on a chart, you would see that it goes back to 0 about 5,000 years ago. If man has been here millions of years like evolutionists teach, where is the population?
So those kinds of simulations, I saw Dr. Blitz actually, he has a formula for this, and it was really funny because he was talking to a young earth creationist, and he put in all the numbers, like with the number of people after the flood, 8 or whatever it is, and then the reproductive rate that we observe, whatever. And it was like, it produced astronomically more people than are actually alive today. The built-in assumptions are just awful for this. It assumes that everybody reproduces, or like every female reproduces, which means it doesn't allow for anybody to die before they get to reproductive age. So what's happened here is they've started with a conclusion and they've come up with a mathematical model that converges to that conclusion. Anybody can do that.
The whole population growth can be studied by anyone, and it will be found that the population of the Earth dates a young age for the Earth of 4,000 to 5,000 years. Since the flood started with 8 people, all of the ancient writings that we have show a young age of the Earth.
No, they don't.
Why don't we have people writing about kings that lived 50,000 years ago?
Like, Göbekli Tepe is like 12,000 years old. It's twice as old as you think the Earth is. We didn't know about it when he wrote this, I don't think.
Why is it that all of recorded history happened in the last 4,000 years?
It didn't. Like, that's just so stupid. Aren't the pyramids older than that?
These honest questions deserve an honest answer. I believe we have been lied to about the age of the Earth. Satan, the father of all lies, has come up with this one to try to make a fool of Jesus Christ. Jesus said in Matthew 19:4 that the creation of Adam and Eve was the beginning. I believe Jesus was right. Believe it or
The end. Well, everybody, it took 3 videos, but we did it. We got through the entire dissertation. Did I learn anything? Well, no. But if you disagree with something, you have to inform yourself about what its claims are or where they're coming from, what they believe in, so that you know how to attack their ideas, try to understand things the way they do, and communicate it to them on their terms to prove that, even according to their terms, this is all bullshit. As Billy Joe Armstrong said, do you know your enemy? Thanks for watching.